So you want to be a writer, but you don't know where to start. Today's video is going to be talking about starting entirely from stage one. I'm talking you have written assignments for school, maybe a short story for school as well, but you've never written your own creative project, whether it's poetry, a short story, a novella, a novel, by yourself. So today's video is talking about how to start as a writer. But first, who am I? My name is Paris and I'm the author of the Magi trilogy. Book 1, The Magi, came out on August 26th and I'm so excited, I'm still so excited that you guys can now officially read it. So here is my credibility for you guys. I'm going to tell you guys how I started as a writer so that I can help you guys start as a writer. Writing a story, any story, no matter whether it's 1 page or it's 100 pages, it starts with an idea. So if you want to be a writer, the first thing you need to do is come up with an idea. And that might seem really sometimes overwhelming. It might seem complex because how do you come up with an idea that's big enough for an entire story? Well, when you're starting, you don't need to have an entire huge novel as your first project. What I personally started writing was fan fiction. Yes, I was a fan fiction writer, and I am proud that I was a fan fiction writer because it is really what crafted me into getting the confidence into being able to write my own novel that is not a fan fiction. And also, if you stay as a fan fiction writer, there is no shame in that either. People love fan fiction. That is a really big thing, and it can sometimes be hated on as it's not as credible because it's not entirely an original idea. But the reality is, though the characters and maybe part of the setting are not an original idea, the story itself is original. You take these characters from a book that you love and you spin something on it. You change something. I'm not saying write a fan fiction and claim it as your own. I'm saying you can use these characters as the start and as the baseline. And I think that is very helpful for a beginner writer because when you read a book and you love the book and you love the characters, you are familiar with it and you know it and you understand it. Use these characters that you already know how they work. You already have their personalities. You know how they are because you've read the book, you've read the series, you've read everything related to it. You know these characters and you can practice using them, manipulating them, making them move around, give them things to do so you can learn how to do it yourself. Okay, but what if you aren't a short story writer? What if you aren't a fan fiction writer? What if you don't want to do the creative writing and stories, but your creative outlet is poetry? Now, I'm not really that good with poetry. I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be upfront. It is something I've always struggled with. When I read a poem, it just doesn't click in my brain, and so as a result, I don't write much poetry either. So I'm not going to be able to give you advice as in here's how to learn how to write poetry like a pro, because I ain't a pro poet at all. Like, I stay away from poetry, y'all, if I can avoid it. That being said, when you are writing poetry, you can't use characters in it because poetry doesn't have characters. That's not what it is, but you can still teach lessons through it. There's a lot of morals, there's a lot of feelings, there's a lot of emotions in poetry. So when you are starting writing poetry, what you need to do is you need to feel something. So find a subject that makes you feel, whether it's about love or it's about just emotions in general, or maybe you're describing a waterfall and then just the peaceful feeling of the droplets reflecting rain, etc. Not rain, the droplets reflecting sun. When you start writing poetry, it's more emotion, it's pure feeling, it's not a story. You are telling something about a split, frozen second in time. So when you're starting poetry, start by reading poetry, start understanding poetry, find a style of poetry you like. Because whereas when you're trying to write a story, you can pick a character you like and manipulate them. When you're starting to write poetry, there's haikus, there's free verse, there are sonnets, there are ballads, there are so many different types of poetry. Find a type of poetry that you like and learn how to write poetry through that one type of poetry. Start with that, start studying different rhyme patterns, so on and so forth. Because for poets, poetry is beautiful. I might personally not understand the meaning behind it. That is my struggle. But poetry in and of itself is beautiful. So you need to start by experimenting, start playing around, start with just rhyming, start with just do free verse creative poetry. You can start with something simple and build into something bigger with poetry, just like you would if your goal is to write a novel, a fictional YA or any other genre, any other age group of novel. You start small and you work bigger. Okay, before I branch off of fan fiction and say what's next, I want to take a moment to say that if your passion for writing is within fan fiction, that is completely valid, because being a writer does not mean you're published. Being a writer does not mean you have your own character cast that's original to entirely you. Being a writer does not mean that you write every day. Being a writer means that you write. So if you are writing this fan fiction personally just for yourself, you are a writer. If you're writing it for your friends, you are a writer. If you're writing it to post somewhere on Wattpad, on Instagram, whatever it is. I know I started by posting my Michael Vey headcanons on Instagram. If you guys are interested in reading them, I will tag that Instagram account down below. It's electric_vaniac. That is me. I am the owner behind that account. I kept that secret for about over 2 years, I think. So that is me. I'm the face behind that account. That being said, when you're writing fan fiction, you are still a completely valid writer. What I'm saying, moving on to the next thing, is if your goal is to write your own original story and to publish your own novel, then what's next after that? For me personally, it was short stories. I started by writing just fan fiction, they were little headcanons. They were just a couple pages. And then I started writing some longer fan fictions that I kept secret on my computer and intend to keep secret on my computer. I did write some Marauder fan fiction. It was very dark, about Sirius Black. So we are just gonna keep that in the shadows of the past, and we're gonna move on. We're talking about what's next after that. So I started writing short stories, and I started using a program called Cover Story. I have talked before about a program I use called OYAN, One Year Adventure Novel. Same owner, same guy wrote it. It's just Cover Story is more so a magazine. You write magazine, you have short stories, you have poetry, gag. So you have poetry, you have you do an interview, you write letters, so on and so forth. You put it together into a little magazine. So I started writing some short stories. That's the next step. Start small. If you go immediately into, I want to be a writer, so I'm going to start writing a novel, that is doable. You can totally go ahead and do it, but you might get overwhelmed and you might get nervous and you might get scared. The ultimate reality is that sometimes as a writer, it is overwhelming having all of these characters in your head and you're trying to morph it, whether it's a standalone novel, whether it's just a short story, whether it's an entire series, whatever it is, sometimes it can get overwhelming. So if you're starting writing and you are feeling overwhelmed and it's pushing you away, start small. Start with just a couple headcanons. Start working onto a longer fan fiction. Start working onto a short story. Start working onto a novel. So on and so forth. Remember, I said before that, writing is ultimately you start with an idea. So as you are getting better with manipulating these stories, as you are starting to get better with just controlling these characters, so on and so forth, you will start having ideas. Now, I can't tell you how to come up with an idea because honestly, I don't know where ideas come from. Honestly, I do. I personally believe God plops these ideas in my head. I'll be walking down the street and God's like, it'll be a great story for you to write. And then I have a whole new novel in my head. That's really how it happens. Sometimes it comes off of a prompt I see on Instagram. Sometimes it comes off of an aesthetic photo I see on Pinterest. Sometimes it comes off of a conversation I have with a friend. Ideas will come, and once you have the idea, you need to hold it close. You need to cultivate it. I think I used that word in the correct context, not 100% sure, but you need to build upon it. You need to put it together, and then you need to start figuring out who the characters are, so on and so forth. It starts with something as simple as an idea. All right, I think that's enough of talking about how to start with the idea, how to start from whether you're just practicing writing haikus versus going into something more complex like a full sonnet or ballad, when you're starting with fan fiction, building your way up from short stories, etc. I want to talk about, you want to be a writer, so how do you start writing? Because the reality is, you always hear writers like, oh, I write in my notebook or I write in my laptop, so on and so forth. Not everybody has access to these things. Well, most people have access to notebooks, but maybe you don't have any in your house, so on and so forth. What do you write on? When I first started writing, I literally had a pencil and a lined piece of paper. Now, I will say that is probably not the best idea because then you just have these papers just stacking up. I've written short stories on literal just computer paper. Try to get a binder or something to put them in, or just write in a notebook, because I will be honest, that is inconvenient because then you mess up the order. Maybe don't do it quite exactly as I did, but what I'm saying here is you can start literally anywhere. You don't need all this fancy text. You don't need to have Microsoft Word on your laptop to write. You might want to work up to it, or maybe you stick with Google Docs, so on and so forth. There's really no right or wrong platform to write on. I know of people who will write stories literally on the Notes app on their phone, which is honestly not a bad idea because then you can write it on your phone or your laptop, wherever you are. Not gonna lie, that does have some advantages, but basically, you can write with anything. You have the resources around you. You literally just need a pen, pencil, whatever it is that you write with, and a piece of paper. You don't need something super high tech, so don't let that high tech thing scare you away. Again, when I started writing, I was writing on literally just a piece of paper with a pencil, and I moved up to starting using some of my family's computer. But I'm gonna be honest, that was a little bit hard to juggle because I didn't have my own thing to write on. You know, I had to juggle it around other people, so I ended up investing in my own laptop. That was the best investment I've ever made. I will say this, you don't need to have your own, laptop, Chromebook, whatever it is. It is the best investment I've ever made. I will stand by it. I got my laptop in 2019. I've had it for almost 3 years. I use it every single day. I was also homeschooled and I was taking classes online, so I was able to use it for school. So basically, the laptop was a great investment to me personally, but it took me a while to save up. I started writing in September of 2018. That's when I first started kind of getting into it. As time went on, I got more and more into it. I bought my own laptop in October of 2019. So there was over a year where I was, saving up for it when I was building up. And as time went on, I got more and more serious about it. And here we are. We now have my own laptop that I use every day. So you build up in every single aspect. You build up through writing something using somebody else's characters, and to using some of your own characters and short stories. You start with a simple form of poetry. You start with free verse. You go up into something more complex, until you just bust out your inner Edgar Allan Poe, who is also the only poet I stand behind and love. His poetry is really creepy and really amazing. Every other poet, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're trying to say. What are you trying to tell me? That being aside, you start somewhere small and you work your way up, because the writing in and of itself, it's huge, it's complex, there's so many layers to it. It starts with an idea. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope it helped you kind of realize where you can start. You can start right now at this very moment. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are, you can just decide you want to start writing. And by writing, you are a writer. Even if you're writing just once a week, even if you're just writing a little snippet of some fan fiction here and there, you are a writer. So be proud of it. Be loud and proud. You are a writer. So thank you again for watching this video. I also want to take a quick moment to hint at the video I'm planning to do next week, because I'm actually very excited about it. Had I had more time, it would be the video I'm doing right now, but I kind of had to be quick today. I am thinking about doing next week, tell me in the comments what you guys think of this, of dressing as my characters in the Magi. Now granted, it's a little tricky because really just Miles and Rose are my main characters, and then I have the side characters. Starting in the second book in the trilogy, there are more characters, so maybe I will hint at some of the characters in it, but I think it would be fun to dress up as my characters. You guys get a bit of a closet tour. You gotta watch me struggling to braid my hair, because fun fact, I am horrible at braiding, and Rose wears a braid every day, so if I'm gonna be cosplaying, if I'm going to be dressing up as her, I do need to have that braid in my hair, for the authentic vibes. So let me know down below if you're interested in that. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss that video when it comes. And for the rest of, for now, have a great rest of your morning, evening, night, whatever time it is. Have a great day.